I'd like to call this regular City Council meeting to order this Tuesday, March 3rd. The clerk will call the roll.
Mayor Wolcott.
Here.
Vice Mayor Williams.
Here.
Councilmember Tandy.
Here.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Villanueva. Councilmember Viendo.
Here.
Councilmember Williams. I'm sorry, Winters.
Here again.
Councilmember Winters.
If you'll all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just for the record, I don't think that Councilmember Winters left his vote for a council member.
It's good to know. I'll make a note of that.
All right. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda items consisting of items 1 through 6. I need to pull item number 6 for further discussion. Does anyone else have something to pull? I'm sorry. I just jumped right. You would almost swear that we wanted this meeting to be short. So, Mr. City Manager, you have a report.
No, Madam Chair.
Thanks very much, council members. Okay. Does the city attorney have a report?
No, I do not.
Thank you. And so we do have a consent item numbers 1 through 6.
I have a report.
You have a report?
Yes, I do.
You do.
If you don't mind. I'm excited to talk about the voter outreach and permanent early voter list program that we're going to be kicking off a tour coming up. And we're going to be going and visiting different areas in the community. So some of our targeted locations are going to be the 8-acre park and visiting the youth sports activities starting on March 21st. We're going to be visiting the library, various grocery stores, rotating at schools throughout the Dysart District, and all major city events that are coming up. And in conjunction with the community, our communications department, we're going to do a 15-second PSA that's going to be displayed at the Digiplex Theater coming up. And one of the big events that we have that we're actually a co-sponsor for, I passed out a flyer to each of you, the March 26th event, sponsored by the League of Women Voters in conjunction with Dysart, and we're also a co-sponsor for this event, 9:30 in the morning at Nathaniel Dysart Center. We're going to be talking to Maricopa County representatives, the elections department, Yavapai County, as well as it's going to be a brainstorming of what we can do to all work together on voter outreach, which is a nationwide problem, not just the city of Surprise and Arizona, but a nationwide issue. So we're excited to be a part of this. Part of what we're doing for that particular event is we're going to have a bookmark contest, and all the students at Dysart High Schools are going to be eligible to participate and submit. And whoever is the winner of this particular contest, we're going to use a tagline for all of our elections. And we're a co-sponsor, and so is El Mirage and Dysart, so we're all going to be able to use this tagline, so we're really excited about that. And March 26th, the HOA Summit, I'll be visiting as well. Thank you, Councilmember Hall. And we're just getting the word out there. We want to make this a group effort. And just before I forget, the communications department has worked out so we can actually stream this meeting live for the Dysart event, so on March 26th. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. This is really good work and so very important, and we talk about it a lot up here about the importance of voter engagement, and obviously it's never been more important. And we also appreciate the participation of all these different groups on this flyer. This is really great.
We're excited about this.
Great to see our community come out in support of itself and all of the components of our city that make a great city.
Thank you.
All right. Now to the consent agenda, which consists of 6 items, items 1 through 6, and 6 I have to pull because there is, I believe, an inappropriate item in this particular item. So we need to pull and have a motion to continue that one for another meeting. So are there any other items that anyone wishes to pull for this evening's discussion? Seeing none.
I move to approve consent.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve item 1 through 5 as presented. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
Six yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 6, I need a motion to continue.
Move to continue.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to continue this item. Ms. Leslie, is there any specific date that we need to continue this to?
17th.
I'm looking, it should be ready for the next meeting.
Okay.
17th. March 17th.
You have that motion? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
I'm sorry, can we hold just 1 second, please?
Voice vote.
I'm sorry. Here we go.
Thank you. Yes.
Beat you to it.
I need Councilmember Villanueva's vote, please. Thank you. Six yes vote to continue to the 17th.
Thank you. Item 7.
Item number 7, this is discussion and presentation regarding operating budget revenue.
Ms. Duncan. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. Before you this evening, Jared is going to be talking about our preliminary operating revenue forecast for next fiscal year. So this will set the stage for some of the budget discussions we'll be having in the coming weeks. And we'd like to come back to you in another 2 weeks and follow on that discussion with a preliminary of our expenditures as well, including some input from you on some of your priorities. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jared and let him walk you through our revenue estimates.
Good evening, Jared.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. The presentation we have tonight is it's really the first of a series of budget presentations that we will have over the next 4 to 5 council meetings with you. We'll be talking about the operating revenues for the general fund for fiscal year 2016, and we are also including the normal monthly update that we have for revenues for the period ending January. We will bring back the expenditures at our next meeting when we talk about the expenditures. So the first slide that we have shows what our year-end estimates are for the general fund for fiscal year 2015. You can see that the estimate is $93.3 million, about $300,000, 0.3% above what the budgeted amount was. Again, this is for, we're using actuals through the end of January to help us with our projections here. That amount, $93.3 million, is 4.2% higher than what our actuals were for fiscal year 2014. From there, we'll go into each of the categories, starting with local sales tax. The first slide in each of these groups you're going to see is for fiscal year 2015, comparing the budget and the estimate for each. You see that we have the year-end estimate and the budget for local sales tax. The estimates are exceeding the budget by approximately $900,000. At this point, year to date, we're also exceeding the budget by about $900,000. As of right now, even though we're through the end of January, we only have 5 months of information on sales tax. Sales tax collections lag about 2 months behind the actual time during the year. So at this point, we only have 5 months worth of information. These local sales tax numbers include $1.25 million of construction sales tax that is set per policy. This next slide shows our projection for fiscal year 2016, along with our year-end estimate for 2015 and our actuals for 2014. And you can see that our projection for next year exceeds the 2015 estimate by $1.7 million. That's a 4.8% increase. The 2015 estimate exceeds 2014 by $2.5 million, which is a 7.2% increase. We have a few items right now that we're still taking a look at. These are, of course, preliminary numbers. It is a little bit early in the process for sales tax because we usually like to have our December numbers in at a minimum before we start making some larger moves in this area. We have a few items that we're looking at, though. We have some development agreements that we have to reimburse portions of the sales tax collections. So we need to look at the detail a little bit more to make sure that we are properly budgeting for any increases that would be in those areas that are specific to those development agreements. Again, at this point, we've collected less than half of the total revenue in this revenue source. And then again, we're holding for 2016 the construction sales tax at $1.25 million per policy. State shared revenues, at this point, we're about $200,000 ahead of the budgeted amount. Most of that is in the vehicle license tax. If you look at the budget to actuals year to date, you see that we're actually below the budgeted amount by about $200,000. We did receive a payment for vehicle license tax. We receive 2 payments a month, usually the 15th and the 31st, or the last day of the month. That happened to land, it looks like, on a Saturday for January, so we didn't get to post that payment until the following month. So we know that when we show you next month's information, we'll be caught up on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
The state shared sales tax is actually, even though we're through January, we're at 6 months of collections versus the 5 months for the local sales tax. For our 2016 projections, we're up by $300,000 or 1.1%. Compared to last year, when we look at the 15 versus 14, about $1.8 million difference, or 6.6%. In the state shared sales tax, or the state shared revenue area, there's a couple of items that are stunting growth for us quite a bit. In the income tax that's shared with the state, they've actually, a few years back, changed the commercial tax rate so that it will be decreasing from approximately 7% to 4.9% over the next 4 years. That actually started in 2014, but because there's a lag for income tax collections, we're not seeing the first impact of that until right now. So for the income tax for 2016, we're expecting to have a decrease of about 0.5%. That equals about $100,000 less than what we're receiving in 2015. On the sales tax side, the governor's budget included a credit to cities for statewide tax collection services that are provided by the Department of Revenue. The total amount of that credit is approximately $8.2 million for municipalities, and our share of that is about $200,000. So if we did not have that credit in our sales tax, our state shared sales tax, we would be seeing approximately a 4.2% increase in that revenue, but because of that credit, we're seeing about a 2.2% increase in that revenue. Another important item that's coming up very soon for us, and we'll probably be back for further discussion on this topic with council very soon, is a potential for a mid-decade census. The state shared revenues are allocated to the different municipalities based on the population of each of those cities. And normally they're based on the normal decade census that's done every 10 years. The state law allows, after the 5th year of that decade census, that you could do a mid-decade census and adjust your population numbers. Originally, when we were looking at this, it did not appear that it would be financially advantageous for us to do that. But since that time, we have about 6 cities that have voiced interest in going forward. We have Buckeye, Chandler, Goodyear, Gilbert, Peoria, and Queen Creek that have all expressed interest in going forward using their population estimates. If you look at the lines that we have up on the screen here, the blue line in the middle represents what our normal forecast would be if there was no change in population for any city in the state of Arizona. The red line below actually shows the impact if those 6 specific cities went out. And that would negatively impact our state share revenues by approximately $700,000. Conversely, if we were to go out for a census, you see the green line above, we would have an increase in our state shared revenues of approximately $1.1 million. We have an item that we will be going forward to the Census Bureau to ask for an estimate for what it would cost to do a mid-decade census. Based on the estimates that other cities have received, it appears that it will be somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million for that census, but that would be recovered over the course of approximately 2 fiscal years if these numbers hold and other cities don't come out. But in the end, if additional cities come out and want to do a mid-decade census, that would further negatively impact our state shared revenues. Charges for other services. Our estimate for fiscal year 15 is $200,000 lower than what our budget is, mostly due to weaker than expected community development fees. Just as a comparison, we are actually up over last year's collections, but there was we anticipated much higher collections in community development fees. We aren't seeing the level of construction that we thought we would. We'll be talking about construction sales tax a little bit later, and you'll see the same type of impact there. These estimates were based on input that we received from each of the departments. For 2016, our projection is equal to our estimate, and our actuals are actually below by $300,000 from what we collected in fiscal year 14. There were 2 items in the general fund in fiscal year 14 that are not in 15 or 16. One is the CTCA tennis tournament, and the other is the ticket surcharge for spring training tickets. Both of those are no longer in the general fund. CTCA, obviously, we're not doing that tournament, so we won't see that revenue. The ticket surcharge was moved to a separate fund so it could be tracked separately. Those 2 items are approximately $700,000 in total collections. Property tax for fiscal year 2015, this is one of the easier ones to make an estimate for. We're expecting exactly what we budgeted at $6.5 million. Traditionally, any delinquent accounts that don't pay their property taxes in this fiscal year are offset by those paying from prior fiscal years. For fiscal year 2016, we've set the projection at $100,000 higher than 2015. That's based on a 1% increase in valuation due to new property added to our rolls. And 2015 estimate is approximately $200,000 higher than 2014. Based on these levy amounts, the 2015 we had $6.5 million and a 76-cent levy rate. For the 2016 projection, we're going up $65,000 due to the new construction, and that would leave us with a 74-cent levy rate. The 2016 maximum we could levy would be $8.8 million, and that would lead to a $99 levy rate is what that would lead to. Oops. Franchise fees. Don't want to skip franchise fees. Franchise fees, our estimate is $600,000 lower than the estimate. At this time, our APS franchise fee is weaker than expected, and we've looked at a couple of different reasons why. We looked maybe possibly timing of payments. We've also looked at possibly fewer cooling days in the summer or something like that, and we have not been able to track anything that could lead to why this number is lower than expected. We're getting ready to talk to our internal auditor who's had some experience working with APS on some other items to possibly look into what could be causing this franchise fee to be lower. But at this point, based on what we've received, we're estimating in total for the franchise fees to be $600,000 lower. If you look at the budget to actual comparison for fiscal year 15, you'll see our actuals are quite a bit lower than what our budgeted amount is. Most of that is because we have not paid our own franchise fees from our utilities, and the reason for that is we do not have appropriate revenue information from American Water to be able to do that at this time. We could possibly do an estimated number, but we have been receiving information from American Water and are working on reconciling that now and would like to do an appropriate amount when that comes. But we, in our estimate for the year end, we are expecting to receive franchise fees from our utilities. For 2016, we're exceeding 2015 by 0.2 or $200,000. You can see that we've reset the base more or less for the lower APS franchise fees and lowered the estimate and then the projection off of that. Transfers in for 2015, these will come in right on target, since these are transfers from the utilities for indirect costs and in lieu property tax payments, and these were calculated before the budget was put together, so these transfers will end up coming in exactly on target. For fiscal year 2016, right now we're seeing a decrease of approximately $100,000. The reduction at this point is a decrease in the indirect cost allocation. We'll be reviewing that cost allocation. We received a draft copy of it a couple of weeks ago, and we're reviewing it now, and we'll be going over that with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that we're not leaving $100,000 possibly on the table. So for 2016, comparing the total projection to what our estimate is for 2015, we have an increase of $2.2 million. The majority of that is from local sales tax. The state shared revenues is particularly flat compared to previous years, causing most of the general fund resources in total to be flat as well. We're going to move on and look at construction sales tax for 2015, and construction sales tax feeds both the operations in the general fund as well as capital in the transportation improvement in the general capital fund. Right now we're expecting to be quite a bit lower than what we had budgeted. New construction is less than expected. Second thing that we have going on is there is a transaction privilege tax simplification effort that has been ongoing by the state, and as part of that, they have exempted non-construction service contractors, and they are defining that as those that maintain, repair, replace, or alter property, and they will pay at the point of purchase of supplies and materials rather than on a contract with their client. What that's going to do is that's going to shift collections over to the retail side from construction sales tax. The other issue, though, is that a lot of those supply and materials are probably purchased outside of the city of Surprise and will be realized by somebody else other than us. For the first half of the year, the exemption was not in place until January 1st. So the first half of the year, we were still seeing our service contractors paying construction sales tax, but we're expecting in the second half of the year for that to go away, and that impact we're expecting to be about $800,000. For fiscal year 16, we will be below our 15 estimate. Part of that is that estimated construction is more or less going to be similar to what we're seeing today, but we're going to see a full year of that impact from the simplification effort. So that $800,000 we talked about is going to be approximately a $1.6 million hit for next fiscal year. Here we break down what that means to each of the individual funds. The general fund, by policy, is held at $1.25 million, so that amount remains unchanged. But the general capital fund is going down by approximately $400,000, and the transportation improvement by $200,000 from the fiscal year 2015 estimate. So like I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first of a series of presentations that we'll be giving you on the budget over the next few weeks. We'll be coming back on the 17th to review expenses in a similar format, bringing you the 2015 year-end estimates as well as the 2016 projections. We'll begin talking about change requests for 2016. That conversation will continue on the 7th, and then on April 21st, we'll come back with a recommended budget from the city manager. And then we have the 5th of May for the tentative budget adoption, The final adoption would be on June 2nd, and our property tax levy adoption would be on June 6th.
Councilmember Tandy.
Thank you. Welcome back to Surprise. You're very welcome here because your explanations have been very helpful in your presentation. Got a couple questions though. On the property tax slide, the 2016, where we're talking about the levy rates, since I'm assuming that the 7.3 is if we keep the current year's policy in of keeping revenues neutral. What I'd also like to see is, since we haven't really made a determination for next year, could we also see the revenue, what it would look like if we left the rate constant at the same time? So I'd like to see both. That'd be helpful. And then back to the TPT construction sales tax. I'm not sure, but I believe there was an attempt to try to do some fix on that. So maybe looking, I think Representative Fan might have been working on that, or I'm not positive. But some of the issues that would cause it to go down, I'm not sure if it's going to be fixed, or maybe I'm hearing a different message from something. So take a look at that to see if that's a fix. But otherwise, very helpful. I really liked your descriptions in your presentation. Thanks.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, good job, Jared. Hey, a couple things. The census, I'm really interested about the census. And the graph you showed really shows if we don't do it, it's a $2 million difference. It could be recovered in less than 2 years. If it costs us, I'm picking out a number, the estimate of $3 million, we could have that recovered in less than 2 years.
Madam
Right?
Chair, absolutely. The difference we're seeing here is about $1.8 million total per year, so it would be recovered before the end of the second year.
Right, because all the cities you mentioned, Jared, are all growth cities. So they're gonna dilute other growth cities like us. And so, anyway, very good. Then the franchise fee of APS, is that the fee on the bill, is that a percentage of the electrical bill itself, of the power used? Is there a percentage, Lindsay?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Hall, it is 2% of the gross revenue for the sale of energy.
Okay, so it's 2%.
It's 2%, yes.
So that's, that's interesting. So why would well, it'll be interesting to see what your investigation comes out, Jared, really. Anyway, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Councilmember Tandy.
I like that you brought up the census, because something that else struck me was, if we don't do it and the others do it, it could cost us $3.5 million over 5 years, versus if we, I don't like it costing $2.5 million to do a census, but it might cost us more money to not do it. And then if we do the $2.5 million expenditure, at least we'll be on the positive side by the tune of many millions of dollars going down the road. So to me, it's a real easy decision on that one.
I think this is that one's a no-brainer. As painful as it is for some of us, but the reality is we are a growth city, and we have to be there with our partners in the West Valley and even in the East Valley that are growing, and basically be at the table. And so I think it's a pretty important move that we take this, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Pretty much of a no-brainer for all of us. I am still a little bit befuddled by the TPT. This was simplification, and a pretty expensive simplification to our bottom line. Do we have any idea of where the windfalls are coming in terms of how that's spread across the valley? Is there some kind of an analysis that's been done to show us where that's happening?
Madam Chair, there hasn't been any analysis at this time, and most of it is because it hasn't been put in place. It was only put in place January 1st, so we haven't seen the impact on our collections at this time. Some of the other non-program cities that might be collecting their own sales tax, they normally see the information approximately a month sooner than we do. But they haven't seen the detail yet to be able to tell what exactly the impact is.
Okay, well, my guess is that it's going to mean that some of the larger cities are going to end up having some of the better returns because they have more infrastructure, they have more outlets that are selling those products that contractors are using and bringing them into Surprise and other growth cities. So it is a bit of an irony that the growth cities who need more resources are actually losing resources to the cities that are staying flat. But it takes the sting a little bit, for me anyway, it takes the sting out of the other issue for the mid-census. So I just wanted to make that point. Council or Vice Mayor Williams.
Yeah, along the same lines, if we can kind of look ahead at that and look at that data and kind of help our state legislatures in terms of here's the true impact of this, and then across the board, statewide, what's the real impact to our state? Are some of those funds being lost beyond our state borders? And so overall, we're losing money just as a state when we're looking for revenue and we're constantly hearing the cry of there's not enough money, and then we have here a piece of legislation that basically has deteriorated across the board. Certainly larger cities are going to see more benefit, but what about our neighboring states that might see the benefit as a result of this legislation? So just kind of looking at that over the next 6 to 12 months and seeing how we can do a little bit of research and formulate some talking points when we go and speak with these folks. So thank you.
And I can assure you, Vice Mayor, those very points were made, I thought, rather dramatically at the legislature when they passed this legislation initially, and there was quite a bit of discussion about how difficult it would be to implement. As we can see, it took some time to implement it, so we still aren't there yet, but I think it bears out that we do need to continue to talk to our legislative delegation as early as possible, and make sure that they understand that the impacts are significant. Anyone else? Okay. Again, welcome, Jared. It's good to see you back.
Thank you very much.
It's almost like you never left.
Thank you.
Next item.
Consideration and action amending the fiscal year 2015 budget in the amount of $396,000 to establish the clubhouse improvements project, resolution 2015-01.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the council. The Community Recreation Services Department is coming to you tonight to request budget authority to spend ticket surcharge funds on the clubhouse renovation project. And just to get into this, there's a few slides of just some history and where the surcharges, where they come from. So the best way to go about this is probably to look to the right, and the very right column will show you the base ticket price. And then as you move to the left, you'll see the various surcharges that are added onto the ticket and the final ticket prices on the far left. And just to give you an idea, really how generous the teams have been to us, the surcharge, the revenue the city has received over the past 3 years is there on the bottom, just over $700,000 last year, close to $600,000 the year before, and almost $500,000 the year before that. And just to go a little further, last year, our ticket revenue without the surcharges was close to $2 million. Those ticket revenues are split between the teams and the city. 80% goes to the teams, 20% goes to the city. If you add in this ticket surcharge, the city's payout is actually more than the teams. And then just to show you, if we didn't have the surcharge, if the ticket price was the ticket price, and we were splitting 80 to the teams and 20% to the city, that's basically how it would split out. So according to council budget policies, the funds are currently in contingency and requires council approval. We have currently $62,000 available to spend, so we need the additional $334,000 from contingency. As you know, the City of Surprise and Kansas City Royals and the Rangers are engaged in the process of extending agreements, and extension of this agreement will necessitate the renovation of the facilities, and we do need those funds to expedite this process. So therefore, requesting budget authority of a total of $396,000 for a clubhouse renovation project. Thanks.
Questions, members? Councilmember Williams.
So just clarification, the ticket prices aren't changing. It's the allocation of where those charges are going to renovate the facilities.
That's correct. Those surcharges have been in place. We've been collecting those
Right.
funds.
So ticket holders don't have to worry about any.
Right.
Any other questions? Councilmember Tandy.
And actually, this item, we're being asked to take the fund out of contingency and appropriate it in the fund so it can be spent to facilitate the negotiations and the closure of the deal.
That's correct, Councilmember Tandy.
Thank you.
I see no further questions.
I move to approve Resolution 2015-01.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve this item as presented. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
Unanimous vote, Mayor.
Thank you. Next item.
Consideration and action approving and authorizing the mayor to execute an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Surprise and the Arizona Water and Wastewater Agency Response Network, memorializing the terms and procedures for requesting emergency response.
Well, long title. Madam Chair, members of council, the item before your consideration is an intergovernmental agreement with AZ Warren, Water Wastewater Agency Response Network. This is a free network that the city would like to get into, and what the IGA does is it provides a vehicle for which we can recover funds should we be asked to provide service to another utility or vice versa. The beauty of the network is that we can, as we are part of a network with others, we can identify what we have available to assist, and others can identify what they have available. So in the instance where there's something wrong with operational, we can contact those network cities and receive support. It's not just for catastrophic failures, it's for basically anything where assistance may be needed. And therefore we do not have to have all of this backup in our inventory. With that, I'll take any questions.
First, Councilmember Tandy.
So this will help not only for information and access to potential help providers, if we activated our Emergency Operations Center, but it also, on a more routine basis, would allow you to see what kind of assets are out there before an emergency even.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's focused on water and wastewater specifically. So if we had a major pipe break or something, it's not catastrophic, and we need something that we don't have in our inventory, we can call the neighbor community. Or if it is a catastrophic event, an act of God, we're not going to call our neighbor communities. They're probably in the same boat we are, but we can call a community that is across the state or something along those lines. And so that's exactly it.
Vice Mayor, did you have a question?
Let's make a motion.
If you'd like to make a motion, I would ask that you realize that there is a renumbered note on your desk.
I move to approve renumbered resolution 2015-28.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve this item as renumbered. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
Unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you.
Terry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Next item.
Consideration and action approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation for transportation alternative non-infrastructure funds and amending the fiscal year 2014-15 budget in the amount of $72,500.
Another long title. Thanks, Martine.
I'll try to make it really simple. Madam Mayor, Councilman, and Councilwoman, I'd like to go ahead and bring this item forward. There's several particulars to this item, and so we'll go ahead and try to hit them in an order that need to be followed. Particularly, the first part of it is that we need to enter into an agreement with ADOT to be able to accept these funds. These are federal dollars that used to be called Safe Routes to School dollars, but now they've condensed 4 different funding sources and brought them in underneath an umbrella of transportation alternatives. Part of the transportation alternatives, each state was given an opportunity to either use them exclusively for a certain type or open them up to all the old types that they used to have, and ADOT found it important enough to be able to keep the Safe Routes to School program alive through this umbrella. And so that's where this program has come flowing through. The total grant is for $72,500. There's 3 requirements that we have to hold to be able to accept these funds. 1, we have to have a kickoff meeting with every school. 2, we have to develop a plan for each school. And 3, we have to get this approved through FHWA. And the 3rd one has already been done. So we're ahead of schedule from that side. FHWA has already approved that, and we've received all the clearances. So if we do accept these funds today, we can go ahead and go straight to the street for a consultant tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and identify which 3 schools have received this funding. The first one is Arizona Charter Academy. It is located in District 4, which would be part of the OTS. However, the plan will actually take a 1-mile radius around that school, and so it does encompass part of District 5. It also, we are taking a look for Imagine Roseville, sorry. It is District 3, District 6, and District 5. They do pull kids from District 1 as well at that school. However, the 1-mile radius for this one plan does not touch it, but it will affect partially that district as well. And then we have Imagine Preparatory, which is wholesale in District 6, but it neighbors District 3 and District 5 as well. And so as you can see, these 3 schools actually almost touch every single one of our districts. They have a good balance. These are all charter schools, but they help alleviate the pressure on Dysart quite a bit. They are acting as neighborhood schools, even though they are charter schools. Part of the transportation non-infrastructure grant outlines the actual detail of how these dollars will be funneled, their match, and ADOT, of course, has their fee for the review since it is an ADOT pass-through grant. The ADOT fee is $2,000. The total federal funds that are being given to us are about 94%, which is $66,000, $66,500 basically. And then we have a city match of 5.7% on top of the ADOT fee that we have to give. And so the total estimated city funds is about $6,000 to receive $66,000. And so in all essence, that's how the $72,000 is broken out. The timeline we hope to be able to follow is we're going to go for release in March for an RFQ. We hope to have notice to proceed from ADOT. They actually gave me a call today and we're ready to go ahead and give that. So we are looking to actually be ahead of schedule as well. But at bare minimum, we'd be able to get a notice to proceed in April. The project kickoff and baseline data collection would have to be in early May. And then the project completion would be next school year. So we'll actually be able to go and encourage the kids to walk, be able to identify the issues that might have come up and then come up with a plan to be able to identify items that might need to be corrected or other things that we could do to be able to help the situation. I gave a real quick listing of anticipated tasks. We're anticipating 4 meetings at each school. We're anticipating surveys to be taken and uploaded to the national site. And the reason we're doing that is because there's a national Safe Routes to School program. And if we follow their rules and their guidelines, we can ask for their dollars in the future. And so that's kind of the way we set it up. So in the future, if we don't have state dollars to go for, we can have national dollars to go for. And also, if we follow the guidelines that they have, it opens up other ways to be able to receive other federal revenues to be able to do some of the improvements that might be identified in the future. And the importance of this, creating safe routes to school not only decreases the hazards for children walking to school or pedestrians walking to school, it also does it for everyone. So if you make it safe for a 6-year-old, it's going to be safe for a 60-year-old. If you make it safe for a mother to be able to walk that child to school, or a father. It's going to be the same street, the same neighborhood when they're doing it on the weekend as well, and it makes it safer for everybody. It also improves travel time within our city. 20 to 25% is attributed to morning traffic, is attributed to dropping off children to school, and that's from our National Data Collection Center in 2003. But one of the biggest things I wanted to kind of point out is I'm giving an example, and it's old data, I know, but it's a good example. In 1996, we had the Summer Olympics in Atlanta. What Atlanta did was they held it in their downtown, and they knew that it was going to crush the city. And so what they did was they went ahead and said, if you don't have more than 2 individuals in your car, you cannot drive into our city. And so what that occurred is it dropped morning traffic by 23%, it dropped the peak ozone by 28%, and asthma-related events, hence any children who had to go to an emergency room because of asthma or cold or things like that, dropped by 42%. The reason I'm using these numbers is because Safe Routes to School programs have been able to drop traffic by 20 to 25% nationally when they're implemented. And so when you take a look at that, that is right in line with these numbers. We're a community in our area is trying to make things more accommodating for our neighborhoods, but we're also a city that is trying to be green. We're a city who's trying to kind of go out there and improve the livability and quality of life for our residents. And so this is one main way that we can do that, and using about 90% of federal dollars to do so. At this time, I stand for any questions and comments.
Thank you, Martine. And real quick, I think this is a great program, and there's one in particular of the schools that are up this year that affects the OTS. When you see that radius and you see where kids are crossing Grand Avenue, that is a pretty significant challenge, and one that I know the residents of OTS worry about all the time. And so what I would like to know is, because we set the stage for getting future federal dollars if state dollars are not available for actually implementation of the plan, is it on the same formula in terms of significant more federal dollars versus how much the city has to put in?
Yes, but the dollar amount will change. It is significantly. It might be anywhere between 85 to 15, split to a 95.5% split, or a 93.7% split, because every category of federal dollars has a different formula for it, but it's always significantly more on the federal side than it is on the city match.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Tandy.
Thanks. Have we had this grant before? Is this the first time we're going to get it?
I would have to defer to going back and reviewing to see if the City of Surprise has ever received it. I want to say I don't think so. Okay, the next I would have to go back and take a look.
Question would be, do you anticipate that we might get it in future years also?
We are actually going out. That's a really good question I failed to mention. We're actually taking a look at 3 additional schools along Bullard, and I was going to go ahead and bring that up at my transportation update. But the grant opens up this coming week. We've already identified those 3 schools. We have parents who are writing letters in support of that, and we've already contacted those schools. We've also done things in anticipation of this grant, as taking student counts, and as well as taking traffic counts as well along Bullard. So we're lining ourselves up because we know that grant is coming up, and we know that there's other schools in our district that need help.
That's the reason I'm asking if we might have an opportunity the following year as well, because there's actually 4 schools now. We've got Ashton Ranch, Rancho Gabriela, Marley Park, and now Legacy Traditional Schools. They're all situated, with the exception of Legacy Traditional Schools, on the west end of Bullard. And a lot of their students travel across, and that's an issue. So the reason I'm asking is, does it make sense to try to study all that within these dollars, or would we be spreading it too thin and not getting a good enough result? And then the last question would be, what kind of result would we expect out of this other than a study? Would we see tangible improvements in safety and results?
Well, okay. I'll try to hit those if I can remember them correctly in the right order. First is the 4 schools. Yes, I've been in other communities where we've done up to 15, 20 schools. Every school, what we're trying to do is an action level 1 plan. And what that indicates there is what are the initial things that we can do either through education, enforcement, maybe some engineering items to be able to get that initial low-hanging fruit to make an improvement right now. There's some things in each one of those plans that are going to be identified that are going to be maybe a little bit more expensive. At that point in time, we would go ahead and make an application to either take that one item and proceed with the regular engineering and other tasks, or to move to a level 2 plan and actually identify other means to be able to make those improvements, either partnerships and other things like that. Do we spread ourselves thin? Not really, because each one of those plans are site specific, and hence we're not doing one plan for all 3 schools. We're doing 3 separate plans. It just happens to be one grant number that we're accepting it under. And so yes and no, because hopefully depending on each plan we'll identify different tasks and different specific things that we can do, and we might be chasing one grant for one school and a completely different grant for another school.
I guess what I'm asking is, with acceptance of this grant and approval of this grant, it looks like the plan is to get 3 schools done. Within this existing money, could we also add the other 4 schools, or is that going to be out of scope? Because some of those schools actually have some urgent needs sooner than later.
Unfortunately, we wouldn't. We would have to reopen up and for those other ones. And with the amount of money that we have, it's going to be pretty tight to get these 3 schools done correctly. But we could go out, instead of doing the next 4 schools, we could do like a district-wide Safe Routes to School grant and ask for a maximum dollars. But sometimes that gets a little difficult, because then at that point in time you are spreading the peanut butter pretty thin. It's easier to go ahead and try to get each school and to get the support, and then at that point in time we can allocate specific dollar amounts.
Well, then I'd be in favor of moving this forward and using it as a model, but maybe taking a look in the future about something that handles at least the 4 Bullard schools there, because I think every one of them is going to have an issue.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Vice Mayor Williams.
Yeah, along the same lines, and I was thinking of Ashton Ranch right away, Councilmember. There's schools along Greenway, West Point, Countryside, Valley Vista High School. A number of years ago, a kid got hit going across that road. So certainly a number of schools along those main arterials. And so taking a look at that bigger picture, looking at this grant, obviously as you go through this process and the process you described, there's going to be lessons learned in terms of low-lying fruit that we can apply across the board. But I think having those conversations with those school officials, they'll know how kids are getting to those schools and be able to identify all those schools instead of kind of looking at, like you said, spreading the peanut butter too thin. They'll be able to identify all those things. So down the road, I think this is great. I think what you're bringing forward, good conversation to start. One of my questions was, how much would it cost down the road in terms of, when you look at Grand Avenue, there might be some expensive product that needs to go in there to really truly make that Safe Routes to School for Arizona Charter or any other schools that would benefit from that. So in looking down the road, I would look to have those conversations with school officials and kind of continue that process and look to move that forward again on all those, that Greenway, Bullard, and any other area where kids are crossing those main arterials.
Mm-hmm. One of the important things here I'd like to kind of point out is
Try school, they cross.
Part of the finalizing of the draft plan review and the actual plan document is if there is a larger ticket item there, they'll try to identify some possible ways of solving that. They, of course, at this level, we wouldn't come out with the full amount. It's just too high level, but they, like I'm sure for Grand Avenue, they're going to have to come out and they'll see, is it hazard buzzing? Is it an actual pedestrian bridge, or what other treatment? And at that point in time, we would have to take a look at going for additional dollars.
And just on top of that point, and there is other schools in that Arizona Charter Academy area, there is also a public school south in Dysart, or excuse me, in El Mirage, that's also where kids are going to that need that safe route to school as well. And as the Vice Mayor just whispered to me, eventually we're going to have a WestMec project there in that general area. So we have a lot of that critical mass of students that are going to need a safe way to get across a pretty busy road. So that's an important one. Councilwoman Villanueva.
I just wanted to ask you, is it, in the future, is this taking in public schools, or why are we just going with charter schools at this point?
That's a really good question. This grant was open up to all schools that are considered public schools. Charter schools are considered a public school underneath Arizona state statute. It wasn't open up to private schools. When we went out to Dysart, we had originally planned to try to go out and go for 4 separate grants to break up the Dysart school district into 4 different sections. However, at the time, we were required to get a signature off the highest level of authority in that school district, and they were going through some changes, and it was very difficult to try to get that signature. What we've done now this time is, because of the difficulty in trying to obtain that one signature, I made the request to MAG at a couple different meetings and came to the consensus. They agreed that we could go ahead and get the highest level at the school that we are working with. And so at that point in time, it would be the principal, the vice principal, and it would make it a little bit easier than at that point in time to get some of these public schools that we are outreaching right now to that are in the Dysart School District. If we decided to go district-wide and the superintendent decided to sign off on it, it would be great. You know, the more signatures, the more support that we have, the greater partnership, it makes a stronger application. So it was just timing. It kind of made it a little difficult, but we are reaching out to Dysart, and we are trying to go ahead and make that partnership at this time.
Yeah, and the reason that I'm concerned is that a lot of the Dysart students do walk to school. You know, and they do cross streets, and they're just as much jeopardy as the other schools. I see it every day in my street.
Yep. And that was part of one of the things I identified there was, you know, you make it safe for one student, you make it safe for all students. You make it safe for one individual, you make it safe for all individuals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Thanks again, and you know, this is long overdue. I think it's great that we're at least tackling these first few schools, but immediately jumping into the next opening of bids for the next grant cycle. So I'm so glad that we're on target. Thank you for doing that. Next item.
We need to take a vote on this.
I need a motion.
You need a motion. Here's my, I've got all these wrong attachment notes and all that good stuff.
I move.
We have the wrong attachment, just to make sure everybody understands. We had the wrong attachment to this item for the agenda, but it is agendized appropriately. So I will entertain the motion.
I move to approve Resolution 2015-24.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve this item as presented. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
Unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you. Next item.
Consideration and action amending the fiscal year 2015 budget to establish the Jerry Street and Rimrock drainage improvements capital project and entering into an IGA. Resolution 2015-22.
Good evening, Carl.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of council. Thank you for this opportunity to present to you the capital improvement modification to this year's capital plan to approve the project to improve drainage in Jerry Street in the original town site at Rimrock, and to approve the intergovernmental agreement with flood control for the grant that's being awarded for this. Use that. All right. Okay, as you see, it's pretty close to the northeast corner of the old original town site in just south of Paradise Rimrock and Jerry Street. And here's an aerial of the location. The house is approximately just south of Jerry Street, and then that's the area that's circled is the lot that we are going to improve to take on the drainage that's affecting the property to the south. Here, just to show you some pictures that show the flooding that did occur in the large rain event and how serious it can get. You know, unfortunately, these areas were planned well before you had the knowledge that you can do now when you put in developments to take on drainage in retention basins to cover your 2-hour, 100-year storm event. And just to give you some bullet items, you know, obviously there's some historical flooding in this area. We had applied for a small project assistance with flood control, was awarded this year. And so did some estimating of costs. There's appraisal going on of the property right now, design of the basin and the construction of the basin itself. Excuse me, we're looking at an above ground drainage structure right now, and not that seems to be easier to maintain, a simpler construction, and might get us better bang for the buck. And with the $250,000, maybe we won't have to go for as much local assistance on that. And I'd like to open up for questions.
Questions, members? No questions? Councilwoman has no questions. She knows it like the back of her hand.
Yeah. So yeah, we're excited about taking care of this property down there.
So, Councilwoman, would you like to move?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve this item as presented. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll.
Unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you. Next item is call to the public. Does anyone wish to speak to the council this evening?
No, Mayor.
Other business, future agenda items, council members. Councilmember Biondo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to suggest that somewhere down the way, not necessarily the next meeting or workshop, that we schedule a report from the community for a couple of reasons. First, there hasn't been one in some time. And also, I just found out, which I had not known, that Dr. Akas is on an assignment with Rio Salado in the downtown area, and he's turned over all the daily operations at the community as well as the Lifelong Learning Center to Greg Pereira. And I've made contact with Greg Pereira, and he'd be more than happy to come and do just a general update on what's going on at the university as well as the Lifelong Learning Center. So I think it would be helpful for all of us to have that report. So I'd like to see that scheduled.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. This is kind of an alert that maybe we need to. There's a Senate Bill 1435, which adjusts open meeting law.
Oh.
And I think it would. I think I know how all of us feel. I don't want it adjusted. I mean, government has a low trust level with the public as it is. We don't need to compound it or exacerbate it by changing an open meeting law. But right now, according to Nicole, it doesn't. It's kind of a dead issue right now, but it could raise its head, and I thought maybe we should be on notice to, if all of you supported it, that we make a resolution or a proclamation as a city to send to our state legislatures that we are not in favor of this amendment to open meeting law. So,
well, at the very least, we should be picking up the phone and calling our legislative delegation
yes.
and telling them how we feel. I think that is, we'd like to make certain that it is
yes.
dead and stays dead. So, but good point, good point. Anyone else? Okay. Council reports. Councilmember Biondo, we'll start with you.
I'll pass, thank you.
Councilmember Tandy?
Pass.
Councilmember Hall?
I'll pass.
Councilwoman Villanueva?
I just wanted to thank Jackie and Roy for We had about 22, 23 people there, and we had a real good workshop. And we will, in March, we're going to continue and start really focusing on what we're going to do with the OTS. But I do want to thank Jackie and Lloyd for being there, and also the young man that was with them. I don't remember his name. But thank you anyway, if you hear me. It was a real good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Nothing this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And for brevity's sake, I will pass as well. So at this point, there is no executive session planned for this evening. So I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.